Hi, everybody.
Hey, Tony. Hi, folks. Like Jamie just said in the chat, we have tons of early birds today. Super excited to see all of you and get started, but we are going to wait to get started until a little after 1 o'clock to make sure everybody has a chance to join. In the meantime, feel free to say hello in the chat or make some awkward small talk about your holiday experiences.
What an awesome group of early arrivers. I, however, will be staying off screen for a minute to eat lunch.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. If you are looking for the 2022 Council on Homelessness orientation session, you are in the right place. That is what we are going to be doing here today. It's really great to see faces that are familiar and definitely a lot of faces that are new. My name is Maddie Nation. I am a policy analyst with Homebase. Homebase is a nonprofit technical assistance firm that supports Contra Costa Continuum of Care and the Council on Homelessness in a variety of different ways. And we'll get into more detail on that as the orientation goes on. So for today, we are starting with some welcome and introductions. Then we have some pretty meaty content items that will be a mix of presentation as well as a couple of quick interactive activities that hopefully won't be too groan-inducing or feel like we're pulling your teeth. So we're going to start off with why are we doing this work, adding some framing to the fight to end homelessness within Contra Costa County. Then we will give a brief overview of the Contra Costa homeless system of care before we begin to discuss the Council on Homelessness ongoing commitment to racial equity. We'll then take a quick break, a 5-minute break around 2 o'clock if we can swing it. And after our break, we will get back together to discuss expectations for council members and some of the various roles on the Council on Homelessness, as well as discuss some of the other committees that you all may participate in as in your space as a Council on Homelessness representative. So to kick us off with our welcome, I'm going to turn it over to Christy Saxon from H3.
Thanks, Maddie. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy 2022. Feels a bit of a repeat of 2020 and 2021 already. I hope everyone is staying safe and staying healthy. Please wash your hands and wear masks and get vaccinated. Sorry, public announcement there. Anyway, thanks again for joining us. And I really want to offer just a really warm welcome to our newest members. This work is incredibly important to our community. I was on a call with leadership from the health department today, actually talking about you all. So it's just, I really want to impart the importance of this work that we do, the importance that our providers and service members in the community are offering to really help eradicate homelessness for our neighbors who are currently on the street, and really working to prevent people from moving into homelessness as well. It is such a big job, and many of you have heard me say it before, but I think it's really apropos to say it again right now at the start of this year. As someone who's been doing this work for 20 years, this is the first time that I have been as optimistic as I have ever been about really cracking this nut. And that is very specific to Contra Costa. I was on a phone call with a provider earlier this week who is in a variety of counties, and they were saying how great it is to work in Contra Costa. Specifically with the council and with the county and the other providers, because we all feel that we're going to get this done and really make homelessness a one-time and brief episode for anyone. And so with that, I just really want to encourage everyone to continue to dig deep. I know it's really hard right now. I will admit it can be really hard for me at times too, especially on weeks like this, when my staff is being redeployed as disaster service workers, because everyone's stretched thin. So I just really want to appreciate you all for showing up and being present. This work is so incredibly important. And I just really want to honor your commitment and thank you. And please know that I have an open door to each and every one of you, those that you work with and work for and work alongside. So please do not hesitate to reach out to me or anyone on the H3 team. And we will continue to be committed alongside you to do this work. So that's it for me, Maddie, unless you have me, if you want me to answer anything specifically.
No, that was great. Thank you so much, Christy. So we have a brief moment for introductions for Homebase and H3. So you just heard from Christy, who is the interim director at H3. And we're also joined by Jamie Jeanette, who is the community engagement specialist. Jamie, do you want to take a couple seconds to talk through the role of H3 as it relates to the council?
Sure. Hi, everyone. You've probably gotten emails from me. H3 wears a bunch of hats, but in terms of the Council on Homelessness, we're really in partnership with Homebase staffing this council. So we're doing a lot of the administrative support. I will often be the point of contact if you have questions about anything related to the council or anything related to the COC. But we're really sort of the behind the scenes, trying to just keep everything moving, and also like a liaison with anything relating to the county or official policy. So that's it.
That's great. Thank you, Jamie. And like I mentioned already, Homebase is also supporting staff to the council in our role as a nonprofit technical assistance provider. So my name's Maddie Nation, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Michelle and Mark, who have told me they would just like to wave during this period of the presentation. So please scroll through the floating faces to see them. And you can reach our team at Contra Costa TA. Oh no, I put the wrong email in here. I will update that before we send it out, but it is contracosta@homebasecccc.org. And then you can reach Jamie through the numerous emails that she sends you, as well as this Contra Costa COC@cchealth.org. This won't be the last time you see those emails, just the first time for today. So we are going to briefly go through some Council on Homelessness member introductions. We're going to make this as quick as possible, going round robin style. We're going to ask you to just say your name, your pronouns, and your council seat that you were elected to. And I will be calling on people using the official roster. So for example, my name is Maddie Nation. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I do not hold a council seat. I am supporting the council as staff. So we are going to kick it off with Iman Novin. Iman?
Hi, everybody. Iman Novin here. I am on the Council on Homelessness as the Affordable Housing Developer seat, and very happy to be here today. I'm commuting to Tahoe, so sorry for the camera being off on portions of it, but I am here listening and participating. Thank you.
Thanks, Iman. Margaret?
I'm Margaret. Right, thank you. I'm Margaret Schultz. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am in the behavioral health seat for the Homeless Council.
Lovely. Terry House.
Terry House, City of Antioch, pronouns she, her. Council seat is local government, I believe.
City government representative. Thanks, Terry. Leslie Gleason.
Hello, everybody. Leslie Gleason. Pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am in the Continuum of Care Emergency Solutions Grant Program Representative seat. And we probably need to work on shortening that somehow. But that's the seat I am honored to hold, to represent all of our providers, many of our providers.
Thanks, Leslie. Kiva Dean.
I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Kiva Dean, pronouns she, her, hers. And I hold individual citizen council seat.
Thanks, Kiva. Happy to have you. Joe Bruno.
Happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. Joe Bruno here, peer support specialist, peer advisor, Antioch. I go by she, her, hers, and I hold the consumer seat on the council.
Thank you. Alejandro Chamberlain. Oh, I think Alejandro had to step away first.
I think she stepped away.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. We'll circle back. Gabriel Lemus.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gabriel Lemus, pronouns he, him, his, and I sit on the Emergency Solutions Program representative seat.
Thank you. Angela Bullock-Hayes.
Good afternoon. I'm Angela Bullock-Hayes. Pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am sitting and representing the Employment and Human Services Department.
Great. Thank you, Angela. Wayne Earl.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wayne Earl. I am the Faith Community Representative, pronouns he, him, and his. Thank you. Excited to be here.
Thank you. Excited to have you. Lene Altman.
I don't see her here yet.
Great. We'll come back to Lene. Deanne, and I'm sorry I always mess up your last name, Deanne, so I'm going to let you say it.
No problem. Hi, everyone. I'm Deanne Perrin. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I hold a homeless service provider seat.
Thank you, Deanne. Tony Yusufari.
Hi, everybody. Tony Yusufari. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I hold the PHA or Public Housing Agency seat on the council.
Great. Sean Ray.
Everybody, Sean Ray, he, him, his, and I'm a public safety representative number 2.
Thanks, Sean. It's funny you have to say number 2. You are the public safety representative number 2. I think Manjeet Sapal, who was going to join us, was unable to join us today, but they hold public safety representative number 1. Pat Mims.
Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Pat Mims. I hold the Reentry Services representative seat.
Great, thanks, Pat. Masaki Hirayama. Okay, Maureen Nelson.
Hi, Maureen Nelson. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I hold the workforce development seat.
Thanks, Maureen. Juno Hedrick.
I don't think she's here, but Alejandra's back.
Okay, Alejandra, do you want to say your name, your pronouns, and your seat?
I do. I apologize for that. As you can imagine, the world of education is an interesting world right now, so I had to step away and take a call. I'm Alejandra Chamberlain. I'm with the Contra Costa County Office of Education. I have the pleasure of being the county liaison to all of our 18 districts. I represent the vocational and education seat. And happy holidays, happy New Year, I should say.
Thanks, Alejandra. So as you can tell, we have lots of council members. We have 19 total council members in 2022 in a variety of different roles and a variety of different seats. I'm very impressed with everyone who is able to remember their seat name. I'm constantly having to reference your roster. If you're interested in the other folks who are on this council and seeing what their seat and getting some of their contact information, that roster was sent to you in advance, and we'll also follow up with an email that includes the roster again. So you can all text each other on the weekends about your council learnings and other questions. Great. So we have just a few quick facilitators requests for today before we dive into the meat of today's presentation. Number one, we ask that everyone minimize multitasking as much as possible. We understand this is a difficult time for many of your agencies and organizations as we're seeing the increasing rise of Omicron across the country. And we also know that lots of people have secret babies that they're trying to take care of while they're coming to these orientations. So we hope that you can minimize your multitasking and tune in as much as possible, but also recognize you're all individuals and this is a challenging time. Number two, we're going to ask you to focus on sharing your experiences as opposed to the experience of someone you may know or any of your clients. We're going to ask some questions today. There's going to be some opportunities to share today. So please don't share anybody else's story. Try to stay consistent with your thoughts and feelings and your experience only. And then finally, we are hoping that everyone can just take a deep breath and try to focus on getting oriented today instead of trying to retain all the detail of everything we're going to talk about. This is just kind of your first bite at the apple if you're new, or maybe your 75th bite at the apple if you've been here for a while. But as you know, we'll have lots more opportunities to discuss, lots more opportunities for questions as the year goes on, and a ton more opportunities to dive more deeply into all the topics we're going to discuss today. So really just try to keep yourself at the big picture. This is the first try, and we are going to send out a recording of today and the slides as a follow-up. So you can also, no need to frantically be taking notes or anything like that. You are welcome to reference it again and again and again and ask us the questions as they come up. Just as a quick little thing, you can say this over the chat or you can unmute yourself to say something, but are there any other meeting requests that people have that would help you focus today or help you be successful during this orientation?
Maddie, can we just talk real quickly? Are you, do we want the culture to be that people can stop and ask questions as we're going, or do you want people to hold questions to the end?
Yeah, that is a great question. If someone has a preference, I hope you pipe up. We are going to have a couple of spots throughout today's presentation where we will ask for questions, but welcome to please put the questions in the chat as we're going along, or stop us if something is really unclear. We don't want anybody waiting in the dark and waiting for a question moment. So that's great. That's great, Jamie. Anybody else? Any other kind of meeting questions, facilitation style things that would be helpful? All right, if not, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Michelle, who is gonna lead us through the question of why are we doing this work? Michelle?
Great, thanks, Maddie. It's so nice to see so many interesting people here, see this great group of engaged people, and so many people were here early, which was also very impressive. So right now, what we're really trying to do is ground us in why we are all here, why we're doing this work. What motivates everyone here to be a part of the Council on Homelessness. And so what we're going to be doing is a little activity, and we're going to be breaking out into pairs to start, and we're doing an activity called the 9 Whys, which some of you may have done before. And basically, going back to what Maddie had said, it's really an opportunity for us to focus, to speak for ourselves, but we're going to be looking at what it is that motivates us to work or volunteer on the topic of homelessness. So it's going to start where you'll first go into a breakout room with one other person. You'll just be assigned, and you will each have 4 minutes to ask your partner the question, why, up to 9 times. But you're going to be doing it based on a model of really deep listening. So the first question is going to be, what motivates you to work or volunteer on the topic of homelessness? And then based on your partner's response to that, you would then ask additional follow-up questions, such as, why did you decide to be in this particular field? Why did you decide to focus in this particular area? Why have you, whatever it is, based on what you're hearing from them, so that it's much more of an authentic conversation. And again, it's going to be up to 4 minutes per person. And then if you could go to the next slide, there's a few tips and tricks to keep in mind while you're doing this. So again, come into this from a place of curiosity. So avoid judgment, really focus on sharing your own experiences, not those of others. Remember, there's no one correct answer. This is really just an opportunity, again, to ground us in why we're all here. And then when you get to a natural stopping point, if it's at 8 minutes or earlier, welcome to just come back to the main group. And at that point, we will talk about the next part of the activity, which is a slightly different grouping. And if for some reason you go into a breakout room and no one's there, or there's some sort of technical issue, just come back to the main group and we'll help you out with that. Any questions before we go into our breakout rooms? Okay, great. Well, then we'll just take a moment to do that.
Mary has her hand up.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm not seeing that.
My question was just, will we be reporting back to the others? For some of us who may have a memory that is not 23 years old anymore, should we be taking some notes?
Very good question. You will only be reporting on your own experience. So you're not responsible for remembering your partner's answers. And there's also not going to be any requirement that you report back to this full group, because I know sometimes also people don't love doing that with a big group. We'll be sharing things in various formats, but you won't be reporting on other people's answers.
Thank you.
Okay.
Michelle, one question in the chat is, are the breakout groups being recorded? I'm guessing the answer is no.
The answer is no. So unless you are personally recording on your computer, it will not record the breakout rooms. The recording will just continue to record the main room, which will just be where Michelle and I are hanging out and talking about our facilitation style for today. So when you're in the breakout rooms, it will not be recording. We're going to have 2 sets of breakout rooms, but we'll explain that in a minute. When we come back to the full group, that section will be recorded. But where you're going right now will not be recorded. That's a great question.
All right, any other questions? Thanks for those. Okay, great. Then I think now we'll just all be going into our breakout rooms and we'll see everyone back here in 8 minutes.
So Mark, it looks like we didn't send Samantha to a breakout room. Was that on purpose or on accident?
No, I just logged in. That is.
Great. So maybe breakout room 21. Looks like it just has one person.
Yes, I will send you Samantha to a breakout room now. Give me 1 second.
Great. And for the other folks who are here with us, feel free to come off mute if you're accidentally here with us and can't figure out how to join the breakout room.
So I was in a breakout room, but there was no one in there with me.
And what are we doing? What we have we got into this part?
Who was that talking? Amber? Was that
Yes. Yes.
you? Okay.
Same here. Nestor Cortez didn't show up.
Okay. So Amber.
So I just moved Amber to room 12. You should have got the invite already.
Yeah, looks like Amber is gone.
Okay, let me find another room. Looks like room 15 is open. So is that Pello?
Yes.
Okay, let me try to send you there, Pello. Give me 1 second. All right, sending you now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What about everybody else? Did you try to join a room and it didn't work? Or are you avoiding the rooms altogether? Mark, are you tracking time?
Yeah, there's no timer on the rooms, but I have us going until 1:29. Is that
Yeah, so we should.
correct, Michelle?
Yeah, that's right. And so what we're gonna do, yeah, I mean, 1:29 is when we're supposed to go to your thing. We're supposed to still have time for, so we might have to do these a little bit shorter. Is there a way to, we can't send a message into everyone saying it's halfway, can we?
We can.
Yes.
So at
okay.
1:25, should we send that?
Yeah, so in one more minute.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
send that at 1:25.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, Nestor is telling us that they are avoiding the rooms.
No problem, Nestor. That makes sense. We can all participate as we can.
So is Leah.
Okay, no problem.
Hi, Dale. Have you been having trouble with the breakout rooms?
Yes, I haven't been able to hear, and so I just put my earphones on, and now I've been able to hear, but I haven't been able to hear prior to that, and I don't understand what the problem is.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not sure what the problem would be either, but I'm happy that you can hear now. Can you just not hear when you're in the breakout rooms, or you can't hear all the time?
It's hard for me to understand what you're saying now, but let me unplug my unplug these, and then let me see if I can hear you.
Okay. Other folks who are just joining us, Jasmine, Dan, Would you like to go into a breakout room with each other? We have about 4 minutes left, or you can just hang out here.
I'll just hang out here for now. I'll get caught up.
Great, no issue at all.
Me too. This is Leah Murray. My apologies. I've been kind of back and forth, but now I'm at my desk.
No issue at all. Like Michelle said, we can all just participate as much as we can possibly participate today. So no pressure.
So Dan, let me explain what the breakout rooms are. So folks are in pairs talking to people about what motivated them, what motivates them to work in the field of homelessness, work and or volunteer. And we're going to be wrapping up the breakout rooms in about this particular one, about 2 minutes. So then the next one, we're going to be putting people into groups of 4. So the same pairs will mix. They'll be joined by another pair and talking a little bit more about the same thing. So at that point, we can place you into a breakout room.
Hi, welcome back, folks. Thinking some of you have rejoined us because you ran out of conversation topics, and that's totally fine. We are going to give about a minute or 2 more for these breakout rooms before we debrief as a group. And Dan, no issue at all that you're getting up to speed. That is the purpose of today. We are all getting up to speed together on issues related to homelessness. All right, Mark, I think we want to hit end. So we're done at 1:29 because I'll give folks 60 seconds. Great.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thanks everyone for participating and then rejoining the group. What we're going to do now is
Michelle, maybe we wait 4 more seconds.
for people still.
Yeah, we still have a couple people who are joining us.
Thanks.
No issue.
I love those breakout rooms.
Joe, you are the first person in the history of my facilitation to ever say that you love a Zoom breakout room. I am happy. I'm happy that you had a good time.
Thank you, Joe.
Really good with Joe. I was with Joe.
Great. Okay.
Sorry we got cut off.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation and then coming back to the group. What we're going to do now is we really want to make sure that we stay to the agenda timing and respect everyone's time. So what we're going to do now is actually spend just a couple of minutes doing a debrief on something called a Jamboard, which is basically an opportunity to put some Post-it notes, some sticky notes on your computer, or you can do it in the chat. So whatever is more comfortable to you. So again, going back to what is motivating you to work in this area, what we'd like to do now is connect you to the opportunity to either do it on a Jamboard or put it into the chat. And in the chat room right now, there should be the Jamboard link. You click on that and it will open, and then you can just click on the sticky note icon right there on the left and type something in, just like you can see right now. Or if you just want to put it in the chat, that's fine. So we're just going to take a couple minutes right now to just put in your feedback about things that you are reflecting on in terms of what motivates you to be involved in this work. And I'll just give you a moment to do that.
And then Pat, did you have a question you wanted to ask about this? Or sorry, Pam, did you have a question you wanted to ask about this activity?
Yeah, let me see that.
Yes. Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think I made a mistake. I thought that the moderators were going to time us and give us a time. So I guess that wasn't the case. We were supposed to do that ourselves. That wasn't 18 minutes though, was it? Didn't we have 9 minutes each?
It was 8 minutes. I'm sorry if that was confusing. So it was 8 minutes, 4 minutes for each person.
Oh, all right. I guess I didn't get the memo on that. Okay.
So sorry. All right, so we have some folks adding some stuff to the Jamboard. Like Michelle said, we can add things to the chat as well. And I'm going to start adding the stuff from the chat into the Jamboard so it's all captured in one spot.
Great. We're going to take just like another 30 seconds. Great. While people are wrapping up, I'm just going to share some of these things that we're seeing. What I'm seeing is some very specific motivations, such as working on behalf of children and youth, a belief in people's deserving to live with dignity and hope, family values, to really focus on the complicated challenge of homelessness, personal experience, lived experience of homelessness, and really wanting to help those in the community that are most vulnerable, working from a place of faith, having, again, family and friends who have experienced homelessness, and believing in the human right of shelter. So this is great. I really appreciate this. And I encourage you all to take a closer look at this. We'll also, we can share this after, but it's a good reminder about why we are all here, especially in this time where we can't be together all in the same space, to just connect with the fact that we are all here for a bigger reason. And I really appreciate seeing all of that. So with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Mark, and he's going to be talking a little bit more about the overview of the homeless system of care.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle, for leading us through that interactive activity, and thank you all for participating. My name is Mark Mora. I also work with Homebase. Some of you may recognize me. One of my roles is to support the Council on Homelessness meetings. Along with Jamie, Jeanette, we kind of tag team, and then also one of my colleagues who was not here today at this meeting, Tanya. I have the role of talking about something a little more technical. That's the homeless system of care. I'll give an overview of that. But the first thing I want to do, go ahead and go to the next slide, is use the Jamboard that Michelle had you all use earlier. If one of my colleagues can please pop the link back into the chat, or perhaps you still have the Jamboard open. Want to get your thoughts on a question or ask you for your questions about homelessness in Contra Costa County. So if you could, at the top part, once you open the Jamboard, there are arrows. If you move the arrow to the right, it takes you to the next slide. And so the top part should say, what questions do you have about homelessness in Contra Costa County? And just a disclaimer, we will not be necessarily answering these questions today, but we just want to get a sense of what's on your mind as it relates to homelessness in the county. So if you could, please go ahead and pop your sticky notes in there, or you can type into the chat and we'll make sure it gets included. All right, I'll read a couple as they come. There's a notion going around that apparently Richmond is not getting enough share of resources. Thanks for your question. What are the roles of the city / county? How is behavioral health built into housing options? Why did Concord shut down tiny homes? How are services being evaluated for effectiveness? These are great questions. I see also some questions showing up in the chat. I'll just read those off real quick. What is the scoring used to prioritize people? Sorry, did someone want to ask a question or say something? Okay, maybe not. How can we use abandoned buildings to house folks? What are the estimates on the number of homeless individuals? All right, lots of great questions. Again, we won't be able to, because of time, answer all of these questions today, but hopefully with the remaining content in the presentation, we can at least touch on some of these questions. And then of course, we can follow up after the meeting as well with resources. So thank you all for putting your questions in there, and we'll make sure any questions that went into the chat also end up on the Jamboard. All right, so go ahead and go to the next slide. No worries. There we go. Awesome, thanks, Maddie. So I'm just gonna quickly talk about some definitions, and actually in this part of the presentation, I'm gonna be glossing over a lot of different terms and acronyms. I won't have the time, unfortunately, to define them all. There's a lot to learn. But I just want to familiarize folks with some of these terms. For many of you, perhaps you're very familiar with them. And so in this slide, I just wanted to highlight some of these key terms as it relates to the system response in Contra Costa to homelessness. So access points, that's how consumers connect to services. And then there's prevention and diversion, which are programs that offer services and or financial assistance to prevent a person from moving into an emergency shelter or a place not meant for human habitation. There's temporary shelter, programs that offer crisis intervention services such as temporary shelter or housing options. There's supportive housing, rental assistance and services for individuals and families experiencing homelessness, which is really key part of the system of care in Contra Costa County, and then supportive services programs that offer supportive services outside of housing to address the special needs of participants. So just wanted to make you familiar with those terms. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So if you notice in this, it might be hard to read because the text is kind of small, but this is a system of care visual map. So this is a visual that's available also on the county website. My colleague Michelle linked the system map in the chat. Not going to go through this too much, just wanted to point you to it on Kumu, which is a web-based interactive visual tool. You can actually click on all these little icons and it'll kind of take you around and show you the definitions of things. So I encourage you to do that when you have some time, but I just wanted to highlight overall that the system of care is pretty vast. But also it really just kind of boils down to the ways that the system of care addresses homelessness through these various access points. And you can see that a lot of the terms correlate to the definitions I gave you in the previous slide. And also we'll provide this link to the visual map in the materials that we'll share after the orientation. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Also, I want to talk about what a continuum of care or a COC is. It's a group of organizations and agencies that collectively coordinates homeless assistance activities and resources in a community. There are currently 44 COCs in California, and they typically cover one county. The Council on Homelessness is the board for the COC that covers Contra Costa County. And just highlight a couple things about COC. It's not a legal entity. Again, it's this collection of organizations and entities that meet regularly to discuss and plan the community's response to homelessness. And also there's a designated entity, which is often a local government agency or nonprofit organization. In this case, it's H3. And it's H3 is commonly referred to as the collaborative applicant or COC lead agency. These terms are HUD terms, or the Department of Housing and Urban Development. They're terms that they use. And so one of the things, for instance, the designated entity does, it submits the COC's application for homeless assistance grant funds to HUD. And also the designated, I said that already, the designated entity in Contra Costa County. Okay, so go ahead and go to the next slide. Just wanted to give you an overview of the continuum of care flowchart. So you see the Council on Homelessness there in blue. The Council on Homelessness is an advisory body to the Board of Supervisors. And then there you see H3 on the right, which provides support to administrative support to the Council on Homelessness. And then the committees below the council, you see council standing committees, ad hoc committees. So these are the vehicles through which the COC carries out, the council carries out much of its work. Won't go into details about the committees just yet, because we will do that later. Just for now, know that standing committees equals committees that kind of meet on a mostly regular basis, and then the ad hoc committees are convened usually for like a specific time period and purpose. For instance, the point in time count. So we'll talk more about committees later. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Apologies on this one. I'm definitely not going to be able to, I don't have the time to go through all the different acronyms, but so this is the largest sources of funding. You see in the pie chart. These are not all of the sources of funding in the COC, just the largest. Just want to point out that there are, there's a number of different types of funding sources. So there's state funding, there's federal funding. So a key takeaway just from this slide is that, there's a lot of different acronyms. Also that the council oversees the largest pot of funding available, which is the one on the right. It says COC program, 53%, so the biggest chunk of the pie. So that is funding from HUD, and that's the COC program. So the council oversees that funding. And then there are other funding sources such as HOME and CDBG, which are overseen by local jurisdictions. And it's essential that the council coordinates with these bodies to reduce the amount of duplication and most effectively utilize the different resources. Okay. And then I see, let me pause real quick. There's a comment in the chat. Would be good to add dollar amounts for each piece of pie in addition to percentages. Thank you, Deanne, for that comment. It's something we can definitely look to do moving forward. So what is COC funding? So again, that large pot of funding that was the bulk of that pie chart. So COC funding is federal funding that's available for housing and infrastructure supports on a competitive basis. We refer to it often as the COC NOFO, or just the NOFO. NOFO stands for Notice of Funding Notice of Funding Opportunity. There are housing types that are supported by this funding: permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and joint transitional housing and / rapid rehousing. I'll define those terms a little or in the next slide. And then the funding also provides support for the infrastructure activities, which are coordinated entry and HMIS. I'll talk about those in an upcoming slide as well, and then also for COC planning. So again, just know that COC funding funds housing supports and services, and also keeps the infrastructure of the COC moving. And then it must be used to serve those who meet HUD's definition of homelessness. And then go ahead and go to the next slide. So housing types, PSH, or permanent supportive housing, it's the most intensive housing model. It's targeted to individuals and families with the most severe housing and service needs. And then there's rapid rehousing, which is time-limited housing intervention. It's typically targeted to individuals and families with moderate needs. And so in this chart, you can see that both PSH and RRH programs, they include housing assistance and wraparound supportive services. But PSH has no time limit, whereas rapid rehousing is time limited. And for those who might not be familiar with what wraparound supportive services means, it just means that a number of organizations work together to provide kind of a holistic program of supports, and it's a strengths-based intervention which seeks to identify and capitalize on individual and family assets. So some of those services, for example, are things like case management, counseling, legal, transportation, etc. Next slide, please. And then what are some of the HUD's main requirements for COCs? So there must be a COC board or council, which in this case is the Council on Homelessness. So it's a collective of individuals designated to provide oversight and governance on behalf of the COC. Also required to do coordinated entry, which I mentioned earlier. And that's basically the process that each COC sets up to ensure that people experiencing or at risk of homelessness are prioritized for resources based on the severity of need, but also they're matched to the available resources that are most suitable to meet those needs. And then also a requirement of HUD is to have a homeless management information system, HMIS, and that's used to collect and analyze data around client services and housing. Next slide.
We can pause here for any questions that folks have, recognizing that this was a ton of information to pack into a short amount of time, but the goal of today is really just to get oriented to the landscape as opposed to dive too deeply into the details.
I'll also just flag, we are gonna send all these out and post these slides. And you can always reach out to me and I will give you a little one-on-one tutorial. It took me a couple of years to get all this stuff. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, there's nothing wrong with you. This is a ridiculous amount of information.
And I'm going to echo what Jamie said, because that's true. Her and I sat for a long time trying to make sense of this when I first started a year ago. So you're all in good hands if it doesn't make sense.
Awesome. Thank you all for adding those comments. Appreciate it. Yeah, I apologize. I went through a lot of content in a short amount of time. But again, there will be follow-up. You will have these resources at your fingertips after the meeting if you want to dive a little deeper. And of course, we'll cover it from time to time in the course of the business of the council. Next part, I want to screen a video that was created, a short 5-minute video that's created for the for Homelessness Awareness Month, which was this past November. And then we'll do a bit of self-reflection afterwards. So if Maddie, you can pull up the video, please.
And I'll just flag your colleague, Joe Bruno, was deeply involved in helping build this. Woo woo.
Go, Joe.
Okay, I'm going to share it. Mark, give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound.
All right. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and kudos to Joe and others who helped put that together. Apologies on the bit of technical difficulties. I know there was the video was cut off a little bit at one point. But really quick, we don't have a lot of time, but just wanted to do a quick personal reflection. So 2 questions I just wanted to ask in light of the video. 1, what emotions did the video bring up for you? And 2, is there anything from the video that stood out to you? If you would, please pop any comments in the chat as it relates to those questions, or you can just silently reflect to yourself and maybe jot some things down. But if you would pop some comments in the chat, I can read them aloud if you're comfortable. I'll just give you all a little time to answer those questions to yourself. All right, gonna read off some of the comments. Definitely was a tearjerker. Thank you, Lamar, for sharing the video. Yep, definitely got me emotional the first time I saw it. Thanks, Leslie. Always moved by the honesty and vulnerability of the contributors, for sure. Maureen, was very moving. Grateful for people getting housed and their needs being met. Tony, the testimonies really hit home to validate the work we do, for sure. Wayne, I remember and always take it with me. All right, thank you all. You can continue to put your thoughts and reflections in the chat if you'd like. But we're gonna have to move on. But before I pass it over, I think I just want to highlight that, I think the reason why we put this video in this section of the agenda is because when we're talking about system and COC response to homelessness, it's always important to humanize and center the voices, faces, and stories of folks experiencing homelessness. So hopefully the video helped to do that and to underscore the importance of the work of the COC and your work or your role as council members. And speaking of centering folks we are serving, I'm going to pass it over to the talented Jamie Jeanette, who's going to talk about the COC's commitment to racial equity.
Thank you, Mark. I'm just excited to be here. When I was in my one-on-one with Pat, I was saying, part of what I love about doing this work is like nobody's in it for the money, right? We're all here because we really care. And that's part of what I love about the council, that you all have actively signed up to be part of this. So can you go to the next slide, please? I want to talk a little bit about the work that the council and the whole continuum of care is doing around equity, and particularly we're going to do some big focus in the next year or so about racial equity. And as we start to look more at data, you'll see there are some really big disparities and inequities in our system about who's in our community and then who's experiencing homelessness. And as you might imagine, that looks really different. Who's experiencing homelessness is disproportionately Black and African American folks in our community and people with Native heritage. And there's a lot of reasons for that we can go into, but one of the things that we're trying to figure out as a system of care and as the council is how do we not further perpetuate these systemic inequities that are resulting in people hitting our system at higher rates. So there's a diversity statement that the council has. So we aim to include and engage a broad representation of abilities, ages, sexual and gender identities, immigration statuses, and racial, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds, as well as geographical representation within the county. And that last one seems kind of funny, but our county is a little bit unique in that we have these very distinct regions, right, of West, Central, and East, and those geographically, those places look really different, but also demographically. So that's one of the things that we looked at, as we're populating the council, is making sure, again, that we have representation on all of these things, including geography. Next slide, please. So I won't go into a lot of detail, but this is a really high level snapshot of who has touched our homeless system of care. So I say it that way because we only know about the people that have had contact with the homeless system of care. This is data that's in what we call our HMIS, the Homeless Management Information System. So basically somebody has had some contact with a homeless service provider and we've captured some information about them. There may be people out there that we've never had contact with. This doesn't include them. So this was data from 2020. And in 2020, we had contact with almost 7,900 people that were literally experiencing homelessness. And we didn't really go into a lot of detail about this, but for the most part, when we talk about our homeless system of care, for education, like Alejandra's bucket is a little bit different, but we generally mean people that are living in places not fit for human habitation. So we generally don't mean somebody that's couch surfing or doubled up. So that literally homeless means they're like on the street, in a car, in an abandoned building, not couch surfing, not 40 people to a 2-bedroom house. That's still housed under HUD, just to clarify. So if you look at demographics, you see what I was saying, that you see a very disproportionate experience of homelessness among people in our community who are Black, so 4 times overrepresented. For Hispanic Latino folks, it's about 17%. We also see higher rates of homelessness we're starting to see for older adults. That's a population that we're also starting to see grow. So you can see there was a 35% increase from 2017 to 2019. And then about 17% of people have a history of domestic violence. So that doesn't mean that they're currently experiencing it as they're hitting our system of care, but have that history. And I think that's really important. You know, we won't get into a lot of that today, but just thinking about homelessness and the causes, trauma is a thread that you're going to see throughout. And sometimes it's trauma that's happened before somebody became homeless, and sometimes it's the trauma of homelessness, but domestic violence can have a big impact. Next slide, please. So one of the things we wanted to do and that we've been working on in the last couple of years is making sure that this group, that you all, this council, represents the population that you're helping think about, right? So the Council on Homelessness is really designed to help think strategically and make decisions about funding and services and what's available to people experiencing homelessness. So we've compared the demographics of you as a group compared to the demographics of who we know is experiencing homelessness in the community. And we have put some tools in place actually in that decision-making process. So when you applied, you may remember we asked a bunch of questions about race and ethnicity and sexual orientation and age and all of that. And it's partly so that we could make some strategic decisions. And when I say we, I really mean the council, make some strategic decisions to figure out how to have a council that represents our community. So you can see we're still overrepresented. The yellow is Council on Homelessness members. Red is people in our system. So you can see we're still overrepresented by, in terms of race, ethnicity, white folks, and underrepresented with African American. Low representation for African American, for American Indian, Native American, higher representation of Asian. So you can see we still have some good work to do as we think about next council seats next year, but we're doing better than we were last year or the year before on this. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Mark to do a video.
Yes, so this video that we're about to share discusses the history of race as it relates to homelessness and housing in the United States, to give folks a bit of background if they don't have that already. It's only 2 minutes if you already have the background. Okay, Mark, give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound.
Society can be judged by how it treats its most vulnerable members. Look around. As a nation, who does America allow to become homeless? And what does that say about us? Black and Native Americans are disproportionately impacted by homelessness. It is no accident. For generations, people of color have been denied access to everything at the heart of a just and fair society. including a place to call home. People burdened most by these inequities are more likely to be met by a punitive system instead of a social safety net. And when they do become homeless, the systems that respond to homelessness often do a better job of supporting people who are white than those who are not. Homelessness is a mirror. It reflects our nation's living history of racism. It also reflects the stark reality that these are life and death issues. But ending homelessness would reveal something else that is also true. We can create a future where a place to call home is within reach for all, and the impact of racism is truly a thing of the past. We can deliver on the promise of the United States as a just and equitable nation. Our decisions created this crisis. We have the power to create something new, something better, something just. Join us.
I haven't seen that video before, actually, and I love it. That was amazing. That was like the snapshot explanation of why we are talking about this. So I want to also talk a little bit about what we're doing beyond just, working on the diversity of our council. We have some very specific work that we've taken on as a system of care and we're just sort of getting rolling with this. So we have engaged some technical assistance from an outside partner to help look at our homeless system of care, all the pieces, and really provide us with an assessment of how we're doing on equity. And that report out actually is going to be next Friday, the 14th. So you've hopefully gotten blasted a couple times by me about that report out. And that's really just going to be like a starting place to really start to plan and think about what we need to do. We did a series of 4 trainings. C4 Innovations actually did the trainings. They were fantastic earlier last year. And I'll drop a link in there about how to get to those. But just so like we had a common language and a common understanding about what equity is, what all these terms mean, and how to start to think about this. We're working to draft a racial equity action plan. As I mentioned earlier, we did some big redesign of our recruitment process for the Council on Homelessness to make sure that we were actually looking at and thinking about equity. And then we've also, the last one is sort of about how we operationalize things with assigning housing resources. So we created a tie-breaking prioritization criteria for these one-time emergency housing vouchers, basically looking at racial equity as a factor as housing resources are getting assigned. So really trying to build some tools into our system. So we're not just saying like, yeah, we think this is important. We have to put that into action. So this is just a little bit about how we've done that. And of course, we are a system, right? There is a ton more work to do to both identify where we can do better and then figure out what are we going to do about that? How are we going to build things so that it doesn't just keep happening? So as I said, oh good, I got ahead of myself, but on the 14th, we are going to have a presentation of the findings, and that's going to be of this equity assessment, and that's going to be the beginning of a much longer conversation about what's going on and what do we want to do to make it better. Next slide. I can't remember if I have anything else on this one.
Great.
So, happy to take any questions about that.
Yeah, so we have made it to our break. If folks have any questions, you can stick around for a minute and ask them. We are going to ask that everyone returns at 2:15. So in 5 minutes, I will update this slide so that it's clear for everyone. We have some break activity ideas here. If you have a hard time taking a break, these are some ideas for how to do it. But otherwise, we will reconvene at 2:15. So we'll see you all soon. All right, it is 2:15. That break went by wicked fast, as we say over here in Boston. So please, if you have stepped away from the computer, return to the sound of my voice, continue to walk back to the computer. If you grabbed a snack, it is okay to stay off video for now if you would like. But we are going to get started with the next section of our agenda. So please return, please return. All right. So the next portion of our agenda is going to be Jamie again, who is going to lead us through council member expectations and responsibilities.
Thank you, Maddie. Hopefully I will not be the school marm today, but wanted to just let especially new members know, as you know, you guys actually have a couple of different roles. So there's, you know, as I put in the chat, you have a role with HUD, but then there's also this role under as an advisory board, an official advisory board to the Council on Homeless, to the Board of Supervisors. So there's some requirements under that, and there's some structures that we work under. So our responsibilities as a council are not our, I'm staff, you all, your responsibilities to advise the County Board of Supervisors, and there's a couple different pathways for how we do that. Providing advice and input on the operations of homeless services, program operations and program development efforts. So there's going to be times as we go along the way that you're going to be providing input and feedback on how the system of care gets set up and is running. We create a forum for the COC to communicate about strategies to prevent and end homelessness. So we have council meetings, we have a bunch of other meetings that are sort of under the umbrella of the council or the COC, where we bring people in to have conversations and talk about what we want to see as a community. And then educating the community on homeless issues and advocate on policy issues. So Homeless Awareness Month, you saw that video. There's a couple other places and times that are very specific around where things come out from the Council on Homelessness to the community, providing information. And then there's advocacy opportunities. And we'll talk more about that later, but your role is really to be thought partners about what we want to see and looking at what's happening and figuring out how we can do it better. For the next page, please. Okay. So this is where I get to do the finger waggy part. This is the stuff that's really around the council being under the advisory board to the Board of Supervisors. So attendance is actually kind of a big deal. So you all are expected to attend basically all but two. You have two excused absences or two absences basically, because we really only have monthly meetings. And part of why this is really a big deal is these meetings fall under what's called the Brown Act. So they're official public meetings, and quorum means that we basically have exactly half of our members plus one, right? So we have 19 seats. We basically need to have 9 people. I'm trying to remember what quorum is now with the numbers that we have. But basically, if we don't have enough members at a meeting, we literally cannot hold the meeting, and that delays everything by a month. So I will be asking you every month, are you planning to come to the meeting? If you're not, let me know. And if we don't look like we're going to meet quorum, then we will cancel the meeting. We've only had to do it once where we've actually had the meeting start and realized we didn't have enough folks, and we literally by law cannot continue with meeting. So that's why I'm kind of harp on this one. We are also asking council members to participate in at least one additional committee beyond this monthly commitment. And you'll hear a lot more. There's a bunch of different options for that kind of committee work. We're asking folks sort of, as you do in your other, activities, to just review stuff in advance so that you're able and ready to engage and participate. Asking folks to uphold standards of performance and good conduct, so that basically, we have some information in the bylaws, but don't yell at each other and don't interrupt each other and don't go breaking laws. There's just sort of basic standards of performance and good conduct. And then I'm going to send you all a link this Brown Act and Better Government Ordinance training. This is one of those things that, because we're an official advisory board, that you'll have to do. It'll just explain the Brown Act and what you can and can't do under that. So this again for council members. I see Dale has a hand raised. Go ahead, Dale.
Yes, yeah. Do you have alternate members that would not vote, but are alternate? And then if you don't meet a quorum on a given meeting, the chair can then declare an alternate to be a voting member?
That's a great question. We do not. And one of the things we're going to do in this first quarter, which we'll talk about in a little bit, we actually are going to look at our bylaws and see if there's ways that we can give ourselves more flexibility. And I think one of the things, especially since the pandemic that's happened, is, you know, the folks that are members of this council are here because you're leaders and involved in a lot of stuff. And that also means you are like tapped out. And you have crises that are happening in ways that you might not have had 3 years ago. So I think we're trying to figure out ways that we can, you know, within the structures that we're bound by, but the Board of Supervisors, figure out how to give flexibility. And the other piece is trying to figure out ways to not just have the council members hold all of the thought and discussion, but like, how do we bring in community members into meetings? So this one's a funny one, right? We're doing a lot of talking at you. But at council meetings, like having opportunity for community input and other thinking. And so even if those folks aren't like officially voting on things, you're providing input and feedback to council members that are voting.
Yeah, the Community Advisory Board has that kind of setup that I just mentioned.
Yeah,
So
we'll look at that.
There have been times when I was an alternate that that they made me a voting member so that they could continue with the meeting.
That's great. Thank you, Dale. That's helpful. I think they have a couple of structures we might look at, maybe incorporating. I appreciate it. Okay, so council members, perk up because you have an opportunity coming up. So we're not going to make any decisions this meeting, but when we meet on the 20th, one of the things we're going to need to do is decide on a chair and a vice chair. Because right now, both our chair and vice chair from the council, their seats have expired. They haven't reapplied. So we are rudderless. We're not really, but just want to flag, we will need a chair and a chair and a co-chair. So think about if you want to throw your hat in the ring or volunteer one of your colleagues. So the chair, and this is from the bylaws, provides general oversight for the council. That's very vague. But one of the things the chair does do is facilitate the meetings, right? So you would be sort of like, here's the next agenda item. We would also, Homebase and I would be having a monthly planning call about the agenda for each upcoming meeting. And then the chair has sort of a more prominent role than in years past. We've sort of evolved that. We now do these quarterly reports from the council to the Board of Supervisors. And so I usually work with the chair to help develop a little intro letter for the report. They're usually sort of the face, like the chair is sort of the face of the council to the public. You know, when we do a Board of Supervisors presentation, that person is usually sort of the you know, presenter, or at least introducing the items, usually writing an introductory message for the toolkit for Homeless Awareness Month, and then is reviewing and approving all our big applications. And so it's not, you know, we're not asking them to go through with a fine tooth comb, but as the chair of the COC board, there is that responsibility. And the next slide is the vice chair. And the vice chair has a little bit less, but essentially, so again, we're looking at the bylaws and trying to figure out what we want to keep and what we might want to change. But right now, as it's written, that the vice chair participates in all the committees, also as part of that monthly planning call to help set the agenda. And then basically, if the chair's not there, they step in and facilitate the meetings or step into those sort of front-facing roles. So I encourage you to consider, and I'm happy to talk with more of you offline about like what the time might look like. Or one thing I want you to know is that we will never just like shove you out on stage. We will always do a lot of support behind the scenes. So it's not like you're gonna just have to figure it out all on your own. Next slide. Okay. This is my part still, right? Okay.
Yes.
Great. So in terms of staffing behind the scenes, so my role at H3, but right now that's just kind of me, and home base. We do a lot of the sort of heavy lifting of helping develop the agendas and other meeting materials, but not just in a vacuum, right? Like this is actually your work. These are your meetings. So we're working with the chair and the vice chair, other council members, and other partners, but we handle all of the like meeting logistics and the, Zoom links and taking the minutes and all of that. We publicly post, so that's me. I publicly post everything so that folks can get it later. And then especially home base is really also a resource around like researching and providing insight on relevant topics. So sometimes we need to do a deeper dive on something. I like to think of home base as our resident nerds, because we all need nerds to go get all the details. They're amazing at that. So there's a lot of times that something will come up and they'll go dig deeper and then bring it back to us as sort of the resident experts. Next slide. Okay, so there's this big forum, the Council on Homelessness, and then there are these subcommittees that we're going to talk about in a little while. This is a visual, so for some folks, icons might be great. For other people, this might make your brain feel like scrambled eggs. So if it doesn't work for you, don't look. But basically, just itemizing like what the roles are, both for council members. So there's the chair's role in council generally, and then on the right, the chair's role in committees, the vice chair, their role on the council, their role in committees, same with council members. So all of you are in that third row, and then home base and H3, sort of what our roles are. So you can see council members are voting in all the council meetings, but also providing sometimes some reporting back. So sometimes council members, if you're part of a committee, you might be reporting back out to the council at a full meeting. And then you can see us behind the scenes are doing logistics, research, and planning. Are there any questions about that part? And again, this is like super surface touch. We're gonna dig in more to this as the meetings go on, and I'm always happy to be a resource. So next slide. So this is actually a little bit less of an issue now that we're having meetings remotely and we have closed captioning. And but if folks need accommodations, you just need to to access the meetings in terms of disability accommodations. I see you, Maddie. What's going on? You can just reach out to our email 72 hours before a meeting, and there's more on the county page about reasonable accommodations. Any questions about the nuts and bolts of what you just signed up for? Okay, hopefully nobody's freaking out behind the screen. Okay, that's it for me, I think.
Yeah, so we are going to move on to the final section of our agenda today, our council member committee participation. So like Jamie mentioned, we are asking that every Council on Homelessness member also participate in one additional committee. And we have a variety of different committees available in Contra Costa. And we have some of the folks who have been on these committees in the past years here to talk about their experience, as well as some new kind of up and coming and exciting efforts this year that folks can join either for the first time or it's kind of been a defunct committee for a while. So our purpose for you all today, for Council on Homelessness members specifically, is to receive an overview of the committees, a high level overview. And then on January 20th, when the council convenes again for their next meeting, we are going to approve committee membership for each of the committees we talk about today. So between now and the 20th, you have lots of time to think about which committees make the most sense for you and your schedule, what topics might be the most interesting to you, as well as reach out to us if you have any questions about participation in a specific committee or what they might be up to. So we're going to kick it off with Path Innovation Committee. Terry is going to walk us through the purpose, the timing, and the membership, as well as some of her personal experience serving on this committee.
Sorry, Terry, I think I accidentally muted you. So if you're talking, you're muted. My bad.
No problem at all. Hi, I'm here to recruit you to the Path Innovation Committee. For those of you who have been around for a while, that used to be called the Continuous Quality Improvement Committee. Now we're the Plan for Accelerating Transformative Housing. Thank you, Deanne Pern, for that acronym, Path Committee. So our mission is to work on the goal of reducing unsheltered homelessness in our county in 3 years by 75%. And we're working towards a 30% reduction in this year. There are various subcommittees, working groups that are looking at different parts of what we think will help to lead to this kind of a reduction. If you're a data geek or a person who likes to look at things from all different angles, turn it over in your mind and figure out better ways to do things, we've got a data subcommittee that is looking at what kinds of data we want to capture that will help us to measure whether we're making progress in this goal or not. We have a group that's working on access to a system of support, which is well-coordinated outreach and shelter services that help to clear a path to housing. We're looking at pathways to permanent housing, fast, clear processes to access that permanent housing that people need, strong cross-sector partnerships, and a flexible pipeline of resources that will help meet the needs and get people into housing faster. We meet monthly. Their subgroups may meet also monthly. And we have a number of members that we can have from this group so that we don't violate Brown Act. I think it's the 6th number. And currently you can see on your screen there who is sitting on this committee. I just want to say from personal experience that sitting on the committees is where you really learn, right? It's the fun part of being on the Council on Homelessness. I've been on the Council on Homelessness now for almost 25 years with a short break at one point. And this committee work is where you learn about your fellow council members and you are able to get down into the nitty-gritty and really make personal contributions and progress towards ending homelessness in our county. So I urge you to be on as many of them as you could possibly fit in time for. It's a great experience.
Thank you, Terry. We didn't slip Terry any checks, but I appreciate that she had some really positive experiences as members of a committee, and we really appreciate her continued leadership in this space. Something I was supposed to say at the beginning, but I forgot to say, this 6 number is not a number that we're stuck to. This is just to give you a reference point of about how many people were participating on that committee. And some of our committees also had a few community members that were sitting in on a very regular basis as well. And we've included the 2021 Council on Homelessness members in case you were part of an ad hoc committee that hasn't met for a while and you're like, was I on this committee this last year or not? Folks are not beholden to stay on the same committee as they were on in 2021, but they are welcome to continue participation there. And if more than 6 people want to be on it, that is also fine. And like Terry said, you can participate in more than one committee if you are interested. But we ask that you save your membership for committees that you know you can commit to. So if you want to join Path Innovations, being willing to commit to that committee on a monthly basis so they can meet their quorum and attendance requirements will be important. But you're welcome to sit in on any of these committees as a community member at any point in time if they're talking about a topic that is particularly interesting to you. All of these meetings are open to the public. So that was Terry talking about Path Innovations. Thanks again, Terry. And now we are going to turn over to Deanne, who's going to talk us through oversight.
Hi, everybody. So oversight isn't as excitingly named as the Path Innovation Committee. Maybe we need to change that. But it's also a very exciting committee. I feel like I need to keep up with Terry. I got to recruit you to the committee. So the Oversight Committee is a really great committee, it is what it is. It's sort of the big picture view of all the pieces and parts that are happening in the Council on Homelessness, and trying to keep up with overview of the COC, the coordinated entry system, the HMIS system, tracking system outcomes, just really trying to hold the whole picture and seeing how the parts are working together and where we might need to do a little more, where we might need to pull back. I really enjoy being on this committee because I'm a big picture person. I like to see how the whole system is working together, and this is a really good view for that. This committee is relatively new. There was several years back, there was a coordinated entry oversight committee, and now we have broadened it to be oversight of the whole continuum of care. So all the pieces. It's meeting quarterly, and it also will spin off as needed kind of time sensitive subcommittees. For example, this year, the oversight committee created a subcommittee, this is getting a little convoluted, that worked on the emergency housing voucher program launch for our county, where we have over 200 new emergency housing vouchers that have come into the county. There was a ton of work by a ton of people trying to figure out how are we issuing those vouchers and who's getting priority, and you know, all the protocols. There's a lot that goes into it. And so that subcommittee reported up to the oversight committee and then to the council. So this is a fun committee if you like to have a, you know, a big picture view of what's happening and how things are working together.
Great, thanks, Deanne. Really appreciate that. Next, we have HMIS Policy Committee, and I think Tony is going to walk us through this one.
Hi, everybody. Don't listen to anything Terry and Deanne said. This is the committee you really want to be on. So the HMIS policy, the Housing Management Information Systems, is a HUD system. Basically, they use to collect statistics about the various programs. But the committee develops and shares updates on policies and practices of HMIS, any compliance issues, any troubleshooting. Every provider that gets funding through the council or the COC has to report into HMIS. They plan technical assistance and training so that people know how to use HMIS. They set up, create standards of practice, ways to monitor programs, and you really get into the weeds and the detail. We've had meetings where we didn't get into the weeds enough and people, kind of push back. And so we got really deeper into the weeds. And it's good to kind of see that stuff behind the scenes, because we talk a little about, HMIS in our council meetings, but we don't really roll up our sleeves and get into it. The meetings are generally monthly. They're an hour, real easy to get through. Usually we don't get through the agenda because there's so much stuff that we talk about. Gabriel Lemus and I sit on that committee at the moment. There's certainly room for others. From a personal note, I mean, I've been, dabbling with HMIS from an outsider perspective, 20 years in San Francisco, and since then, another 10 years running around Contra Costa County and other jurisdictions. But I never really rolled up my sleeves, never really touched it or saw it or understood, the nuances of it. We have our own statistical reporting system through the housing authorities across the country. So we never really had to get into HMIS, but I wanted to know what it was about, considering, it not only touches our, what was called the Shelter Plus Care program, but now the COC Rental Assistance Subsidy Program, or whatever new acronym they came out for it. But it's really helpful to understand the dynamics of the COC, how information is tracked, saved, And then, when they have all these reporting out of like point in time counts and various, information about participants that are involved in the COC housing programs, demographics about all that, a lot of it comes from HMIS. So it's a really fun committee to be involved with. So I encourage you to join.
Thanks, Tony. The next committee that we are going to be looking at is the COC ESG committee, and you'll just have to hear from me about this one. But the purpose of this committee, I also think, is quite exciting. So don't let them fool you. This one has some great potential if you are interested in funding and scoring materials, which is where a lot of decisions happen. So the purpose of the COC ESG committee is to support the application process for funds administered by HUD. So like Mark talked about earlier in the slides, the COC program is a huge portion of funding available to address homelessness within Contra Costa County. And this committee really focuses on how that funding will be distributed through the annual competition process of the COC NOFO. And you'll hear a lot more about that. But in essence, they're developing scoring tools and helping develop the application process. There's something called a review and rank panel, which ends up being a non-conflicted group of folks who will assess everyone's application in the community, as well as an appeals panel if people are dissatisfied with the results and meet the requirements. So the COC ESG committee has a ton of potential if you want to be kind of in that funding space and helping shape those community priorities. This committee is ad hoc, and we schedule it as needed prior to the release of the HUD COC notice of funding opportunity. So that is usually, we never know when it's going to come out, but we are planning to start some of these conversations around February, March. Hopefully that will be released around August, and we'll wrap it all up by September. And this group will probably be meeting about monthly with some months getting skipped, is what it's looked like in the past. And last year we had 5 Council on Homelessness members on that, including lots of folks who you've already heard from today. And then one more option I'm going to tell you about is the Governance Committee. This committee did not meet in 2021, but the purpose of this group is to review and revise the governance charter and bylaws to increase Council on Homelessness efficiency and impact. If you're a person that loves to read policy, this is a great opportunity for you, because what we end up putting in the bylaws is how we end up governing these sorts of meetings and how decisions end up getting made and what sort of processes we need to follow in order to be transparent and engage the community and do our recruitment and all different sorts of things. So there is lots of opportunity within the governance committee to make a change to the way that the Council on Homelessness is run at a high level. This committee is going to be ad hoc. We're hoping to begin meeting between February and March of 2022, and we anticipate that this will be a more time-intensive commitment, but for a shorter period of time. We're hoping to wrap that up around like August, September, depending on some other community priorities. So that is the governance committee in a nutshell. I'm going to turn it over to him. So those 5 committees that we just discussed, COC, ESG, governance, PATH, innovations, oversight, and HMIS policy are the 5 committees that we're recruiting for right now. Those are going to be the ones that we solidify the membership for at that January 20th meeting. And the next committees we're going to talk about are going to be committees that are going to be recruiting later in the year. They aren't quite ready to set up. They're on a brief pause, all of those sorts of things. So those are also options to meet your requirement, but we are recruiting for those 5 that we've talked about already right now. Jamie, did you have something you wanted to add?
Sorry, no, somebody was asking what ESG stands for. I was just adding Emergency Solutions Grant.
Yes, yeah, thank you for that question. Okay, Mark, do you want to take us through the committees that'll be recruiting later this year?
For sure. Thanks, Maddie, for walking us through that. I saw a question before I start from Wayne. What is the difference between the COC ESG committee and the upcoming funding committee? Perfect segue into this. The answer to that is the COC ESG committee has traditionally been focused on the COC NOFO, COC program NOFO funding. And so the new funding committee, which was just established last month at the December council meeting, the idea I think is that it can potentially focus not just on the COC funding, but also on other funding streams. However, that the funding committee has some of the details have yet to be determined in terms of like its scope and how community members are going to be able to participate. So we're going to have, I think, more discussion on that in the council meeting. So estimated time of recruitment for that potentially Q2 of this year. And then another committee is the policy committee, which monitors and reviews local, state, federal policies that impact housing and homelessness. That committee does already exist, but H3 and the current policy committee members have decided that they're going to halt meetings at least until June of this year. And they came to this decision because they didn't see any kind of urgent issues that needed to be addressed by the committee. And also there's a number of competing priorities within the COC. So just want to honor folks' time and focus energies elsewhere. So the policy committee won't be meeting at least until the end of June, but estimated recruitment timing for that will be Q3. And then there's a new committee, the System Performance Measure Committee, which develops and tracks COC performance outcomes at the system and project levels. And estimated recruitment timing for that is Q4 of this year.
Yeah,
Next slide.
Can I
Yeah,
add something
please.
really quick?
Yeah.
So for this year, the COC ESG committee is going to lead our COC NOFA work. And then we are going to be working on ramping up the funding committee, which will focus on a variety of different things. And we still have to figure out how we will split COC NOFA work between the funding committee and the COC ESG committee. But if you're really excited about that COC NOFA work, that funding opportunity, you're going to want to join COC ESG for this year.
Thank you, Maddie. Appreciate that. And then the ad hoc committees that we'll be recruiting for later, there's the point in time count committee, which helps to plan and implement the annual point in time count, which is a HUD requirement, count of sheltered and unsheltered people experiencing homelessness. And so I think the committee is currently active, but we already recruited for that a couple months ago. So we'll be recruiting again for the 2023 count sometime between June and December of this year. And then there's also the Homelessness Awareness Month committee, which plans the annual Homelessness Awareness Month activities. That video that we watched earlier that Joe helped put together, that was a part of Homelessness Awareness Month. So the committee is going to be recruiting probably in Q3 of this year. And then there's the Council on Homelessness Nominating Committee, which reviews applications for potential new council members and provides recommendations to the full council. That'll be towards the end of this year. That's typically getting ready to fill council seats for January of the following year. So there'll be some time before we put that nominating committee together. And then I think I'm passing this over to you, Maddie.
I think so. An honest moment here for facilitation. We couldn't figure out the poll feature for Zoom today. Mark, what did we decide to do? Was it a Jamboard?
Yeah. Do you want me to? I can take this.
Yeah.
So what we want to ask, this is for just the council members. So if you're not a council member, please do not participate in this part. But we're going to pull up Jamboard again, and let me see if I can pull the link. There it is. So I'm going to drop the Jamboard link in the chat one more time. So if yeah. So there's a Jamboard link. And Iman said it's not working for you. No worries. If you want, you could type in the chat and then we can add a note to the Jamboard. But basically the question is, which committees are you potentially interested in participating in? So even if you are a current member of the committee, if you want to continue participation in that committee, if you could list that. So you would drop a note in there, and you could either list the name or names of the committees you want to participate in, and or the numbers. I numbered each of the committees that we're recruiting for. So there's 5 of them. And this does not mean that you are definitely going to do these committees moving forward. It just means that you're registering interest. We just want to get a sense of which committees folks are interested in and which committees we may need to do a little more recruitment for. So again, just the council members, if you could drop in the Jamboard, you would go over to slide 3. I think Maddie's going to share her screen so we can see. And then if Jamboard's not working for you and you're comfortable, you can drop the committees you're interested in the chat.
So we need folks to add their names. So add your name and then make it a sticky. Okay, oh yeah, okay, you can do what Terry did. You can see in the top left corner where she put the committees she would like to be on. Or you can put your name and put it next to the sticky that says the committee. We apologize for this confusing activity.
Thank you all for your patience. And while you're doing that, thank you, Marion, for your comment about acronyms. Yes, we will try to be better with stating the full name of the acronym before we employ the acronym. Apologies on that.
So if you've just put oversight down, we don't know who you are. So it'd be helpful for you to edit that sticky note or add another one that had your name and stick it next to the oversight sticky, if that makes sense. So if I wanted to join oversight, put my name, and then I'd stick it right here next to the oversight sticky. So we'll get to this 2 more minutes. I know it's confusing, and if folks are too confused, please just put the committees that you're potentially interested in participating in the chat.
Maddie, I see what some people have done is put their name and then the different committees they're interested in, which I think would also work too.
Yeah, that's a 10 out of 10 approach as well.
Yay, and I see Joe saying she's thinking about vice chair. Yay.
Joe is already going to most of the committee meetings anyway, so just a few more meetings on the calendar. That's really exciting, Joe.
Originally, I was going to say, I'm not going anywhere. Just put me down. I'll be there. I'm always there.
Yeah, we're going to be taking our official vote on the roles of chair and vice chair on the 20th. So just so everybody knows what's to come. Okay, we're going to give this 1 more minute. Appreciate everyone doing it in the chat and on Jamboard. All right, you can continue to add to that in the background as needed. No one is getting committed to what's on here today. We just wanted to get the first temperature check of where folks' minds were at to make sure we had some pretty equal representation across all of our committees. So with that, we are going to move to our closeout section of today, which Michelle is going to lead us through.
Great, thank you. And thank you, everyone. This has been great to get everyone's feedback. I really appreciate everyone's level of engagement on this meeting. So what we wanted to do in this last couple of minutes is first, just by taking 1 minute to just reflect on how you're feeling after this meeting. We just threw a lot of information at you. And so for some of you, it might have been review. For others, it might be completely new and you might be feeling overwhelmed. And so we have this emotions wheel here, which can sometimes be helpful just in terms of connecting with how you're feeling about something. And we just invite you right now to put into the chat 1 or 2 words about how you're feeling at the end of this meeting. We're not going to be discussing it. It's just a quick opportunity for reflection.
How are you feeling, Michelle? While people are putting it in the chat.
Well, this is great. It's interesting. I didn't want to say anything until I didn't want to bias anyone. But I personally am actually feeling very inspired and motivated by this group, and really feel encouraged by everyone's level of enthusiasm and expertise. So that was a lot more than 1 or 2 words. I see moved, motivated, in awe, informed, resilient and hopeful, curious. Great. So nice to hear this. Thank you, everyone. This is great. So just a very brief thing on next steps, just to kind of wrap that up. So we ask everyone to complete a survey after this. It's just a couple of questions, a very few number of questions about your experience with this orientation. And we are going to be sending that out to you via email. We ask that you complete it by next Friday. Give some more thought to any committees that you might be interested in participating in, and then we will be making those decisions. You all will be making those decisions at the January 20th Council on Homelessness meeting, and which is also your next really key follow-up activity, is to come to that meeting on January 20th from 1 to 3. And there will also be 2 trainings for all members, all council members, and Jamie will be emailing those out related to the Brown Act and the Better Government Ordinance. We go to the next slide, and then here, just to remind you of upcoming meetings. We've talked about Council on Homelessness meeting a number of times, and then we have the HMIS Policy Committee on January 18th and the Path Innovation Committee on the 20th. And then the Oversight Committee will be scheduled later this month, and that will be announced shortly.
Yeah, and just to be super clear with this slide for our new council members, you only need to really a plan to come to the Council on Homelessness meeting on the 20th for now. And on the 20th, we will confirm membership on the different committees, and then you can attend you need to attend those committees as part of your role as a member. But we've included the HMIS Policy Committee meeting date on here and the Path Innovation Committee meeting date on here, in case you were thinking about participating in some of those committees, or you wanted to sit in as a member of the public, because the Path Innovations is going to happen after our Council on Homelessness meeting. So a little confusing, but we highlighted the Council on Homelessness meeting in yellow. That's the one you need to get to. And the rest of them are optional for now until you've confirmed your membership on one of them on the 20th.
Great. Well, with that, we have a couple of minutes if anyone has any questions, or we can give you back 2 minutes in your day.
And I know a lot of people are having questions about joining the council, what the purpose of this orientation was, all of that. So please stick around. We're happy to answer those right now. But everyone else, please enjoy the rest of your day.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Stay home base, you guys. This was awesome.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Council.
Thanks, everybody.
Hello, I see your question. So this was really an orientation for the newly appointed council members, but it was open to the public, because I think a lot of folks have questions about, like, what is the council and how does it work and what's the sort of sphere of influence. So it was, targeted to the council members, but I think potentially useful for anyone that's in this, swimming in this pool.
This wasn't really for recruitment or anything like that, to have new people come on board or anything like that. So this is just an orientation basically for the new members. That would have been really nice to know at the very beginning, for myself anyway.
Oh, good to know. Thank you. That's useful.
Because I just took 2 hours thinking that something else was happening, and I'm not going to get those 2 hours back. Not that I didn't learn a lot, but I already knew a lot of this stuff anyway. So that would have been good to know.
That's really helpful. And I think we'll make sure that we are more clear about that when we do that. And also, just so folks know, there will be seats that open up at the end of the year. So if something piqued your interest and you're interested in looking at applying for the Council on Homelessness, there will be seats opening up at the end of the year. Thanks for coming.
Kiva, do you have a question?
Yes, I received information earlier that I would be informed that my seat was contingent or was conditional, and I never received information that it was official. So I just wanted to know.
I can give you an update. So it's not official yet, which just means at the next meeting on the 20th, you won't have an official vote yet. The hang up has nothing to do with you. It's the calendar for the Board of Supervisors. So basically, we have to submit your name to the Family and Human Services Committee of the Board of Supervisors, which hasn't been scheduled yet. And then after that, and I'm assuming they'll approve the recommendation, then that has to go to the Board of Supervisors to get approved on consent. So it's really just like bureaucratic stupidity. But like, keep coming and being engaged, and then we'll let you know. I'll let you know as soon as all that dumb stuff is done.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's good to know. Thank you. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for coming,
See you
Kiva.
on the 20th.
Dale, do you have a question?
No, I have a comment. I'm on the housing work group for the Council on Aging. And so this information is really helpful for me to be able to attend your meetings.
I'm really glad you're here. That's great. And there's going to be a recording of this and the material. So if any of that's useful for that work group that you're part of, you're welcome to share it.
Anybody else questions or comments?
Let me go jump to my next meeting. You guys killed it. Did you see Terry's comments?
It's beautiful.
That's wonderful.
Big love. Okay. Bye, guys.
Thanks,
Bye, Jamie.
everyone. Bye.
Anybody else? Last chance. I'm going to close off the meeting. All right. Well, thank you all. Oh, are you trying to say something, Marion? I can't hear you. Could you try unmuting?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
As a member of the community and also involved in a local group for unhoused, I find that this was really well done and a bit overwhelming, but also could serve as a great tool for perhaps recruiting future members. So I support your efforts in making it available and to the public, and any efforts you do to publicize that.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I think our goal for this year is to expand our recruitment efforts, because there is a community member seat and there are consumer seats, and those could be good fits for you or anyone else who is a part of your group. So I appreciate that. We'll be recruiting later this year for any seats that become vacant, but I encourage you in the meantime to continue to attend our Council on Homelessness meetings, and that calendar is publicly available. And I think you were messaging me about it, so you could follow up with an email to me and I'll send you the calendar. I just don't have it up right now, but those are happening monthly. There's lots of opportunities to engage.
Right, I am signed up for the email, so I got the notice of this, and that's why I'm here now. And so that part is working well. Thank you.
Amazing. I'm happy you were here.
Okay, me too. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, anything, or I'm going to close it out? Oh, you left. Great. Have a good rest of your day.
No.
Bye.